Hello. I believe we are entering the week 10. I hope we can meet at some point of this semester, but the chances are, even in week 10, probably it's not going to be that easy. So I'm going to upload these lectures on week 10 in advance. And in any way, if we do the offline course at the classroom, still there are some students who cannot participate in the class because of this coronavirus. That's why still I have to do the online class as well as the offline class. We'll see. Okay, as I have advertised, we are going to deal with the case. Basically, the contract law, the spirit of contract law is whatever the individuals have agreed upon, voluntarily, the government should enforce that. Okay, that's the basic spirit. And if they miss something, the government fill the gap by making the default rules. And how to make the default rule is the principle is the hypothetical bargaining. And here, this lecture, I'm going to tell you something totally opposite to what I have been talking about on the contract law. There are some cases where, even though the individuals have agreed upon, later the government says, I cannot possibly enforce this promises contract signed by each other. Why? So that's why the title is Nullifying the Contract. And there are basically two reasons. There's another reason. We already talked about the spillover. The two parties who signed the contract conspired to harm the third party who has nothing to do with the contract, like a labor union and competing firms, if you remember in the previous class lecture. There's another reason, which is formation defense, which means the contract was wrong from the start. And there are some basic problem with the contract that both parties has signed. So the government says, from the start, the contract cannot be admitted to the society, to the government. We'll see what those are. Second, performance excuse. That is, even the contract itself was okay at first, during the as time passes, a very, very special changes have happened and the contract cannot be forced anymore. Is it really possible? We are going to talk about that too. Okay, so let's see in what cases the contract cannot be enforced by the government. To be honest with you, as an economist, I don't somehow find this argument interesting because it deals with a very concrete and real cases. However, at the same time, because I'm an economist, not the legal academia, it's tedious. I mean, dealing with the small things and headaches and things like that. As an economist, probably I want to deal with the grandiose theory and things like that instead of looking at the every small cases. But anyway, if you find out what I'm going to do in this lecture interesting, then maybe you are more fit to the law school. But if you find this tedious, maybe you should stick with the economics, in my opinion. First of all, incompetence. I mean, if someone sign a contract with 5 years old, that 5-year-old boy has a very rich father and mother, and the signing basically says, I'm giving you the candy, so the small boy, you should give me the building your father and mother owns if they inherit the building to you. And the boy, 5-year-old boy, really want the candy, and the boy signed. And later, you appear and says, oh, I gave you candy and you gave my building, so I'll get the building. That's not correct because, I don't know what is the correct age, but obviously 5-year-old boy does not know what building is and does not know the value of the building compared to this one small candy, does not know the fact that he can buy 1,000 candies every day if he has the building and things like that. So incompetence means the person who signed the contract is not able to, we cannot think that person is able to do that. So small boy or some person who do not have this ability, then we call that incompetence. So, that why not? Because when there are people who cannot judge the value and judge the meaning of contract, meaning of signing a contract exactly, you cannot force them. We cannot say that they did that voluntarily. So those contracts the government would never enforce. Okay, duress. Yeah, I don't really use the word duress, but more common word is blackmailing, kidnapping, things like that. So it's like you're signing a contract with mafia people. The mafia comes to you and pulled out a gun into your head and said that, please sign this, which means you give all the money to the mafia. Or the mafia kidnap your mom and says that if you do not give me the building or the money, I'm gonna kill your mom. Oh my God. Obviously, the economics itself, we say the trade is efficient, but only when the trade is voluntary. Like signing a contract, signing a trade at a gunpoint means even though the value of that product is $1,000 for you, but the signing means, it's zero. You just give them freely to someone not getting any money. Why? Because your mom would die. Why? Because you may die. Something like that. So this blackmailing obviously cannot be efficient contract. So the government would never enforce that. It's very clear cut. The incompetence duress, everybody would agree that this cannot be enforced. But there are a little bit subtle cases. I recommend you to read this part. I think probably chapter 9. If you have time, the second half of the chapter 9, you would enjoy to read that. And then as an example of duress, there is a case. The strikes on a fishing ship in the middle of Pacific Ocean. Let's say it is a Korean fishing ship, which goes to the South Pacific Ocean. So from Korea to get to the South Pacific, it takes 2 weeks. Then you begin to do the fishing for the next 6 months. So it's a very long fishing period. And obviously, the captain needs a crew. So he recruited a crew and probably he said, I'm going to give you $2,000 US dollar per month. Will you come? Something like that. So they sign a contract. The crew of the fishing ship signed a contract for the next 6 months. We are going to work at $2,000 per month for the ship. Period. And as soon as they arrived the South Pacific Ocean, 2 weeks of long cruising, and then the crew said, "Oh, we changed our mind. If you don't increase the $2,000 per month to $4,000 per month, we are not going to do the fishing." Please look at the captain. This is a fishing season. Maybe he is getting the tuna for the next 6 months. It's just hot, only time allowed for the tuna. So now it took 1-2 weeks for him to come here, and he has to start fishing. But then if all the crew refuse, then what should he do? He should come back to Korea, which also takes 2 weeks, and then he recruits another crew, which takes several weeks, and then he come back. So out of the 6 months he was allowed for fishing, he would probably lose almost 2 months. And that is a very serious loss for him. And the crew knew it. That's why the crew kind of blackmailed the captain that, you know that we are the only crew around here. If you don't pay me, we are not going to work. So please calculate. So probably they went from Korea, before their start from Korea, leaving Korea, they already thought about this. Okay, at a cheap wage, we sign it for that. And then when we arrive Pacific Ocean, our negotiation power increase, so we can change the negotiation. Well, if this is the case, what would you do? And then, what I mean is, so the captain signed the contract and promised that, okay, I'll pay you 4,000 instead of 2,000 I originally signed with you. I'll pay you 4,000, so please work. So they worked 6 months and come back. And after coming back, the captain said, even though I signed the contract, it was duress. So I cannot pay 4,000. I want to pay 2,000. So not the first contract, but the second contract signed in the middle of Pacific Ocean between the captain and the crew. Should the government enforce that contract, or should the government enforce the first contract signed before leaving Korea? If you ask my opinion, of course, the first contract at $2,000 per month should be enforced. The book says if somehow the wage of the crew increased so much for some reason, so the crew says, oh, everybody else getting 4,000, why we are the only 2,000 people, and wage and it's too cheap and things like that. Maybe they say the government should enforce this new contract. But from economics point of view, definitely this is not the correct case. So economically, the new changed contract should be nullified, and the original contract should be enforced by the government. Of course, there are so many details. I mean, in real life, there are so many itsy-bitsy small things we should consider, the judge should consider. So we cannot say just once and for the new contract signed at the middle of Pacific Ocean by blackmail should not be enforced. We may not be able to say that, but in general principle, the new contract is a blackmailing, duress. So the original contract should be valued. Okay, another thing. Necessity. Necessity is a situation best explained by the first phrase. You are driving through a desert. No man is living. There are no people, no plant, no water whatsoever. But you have a car and you have a gasoline in it, and you have a lots of water in there. But in the middle of desert, the gasoline tank ruptured and your water tank ruptured. So you are destined to die. You cannot go anywhere. You can walk, but it would take you 10 days to get to anywhere where you can get a water, but you have no water at all. So you're going to die. And then, very lucky for you, you found out a car approaching to you and said, "What's the problem?" And you said, "Oh, thank God. Please help me. I have no water. I have no gasoline. Can you give me gasoline and water?" And the person says, "Yeah, it just happens I have extra gasoline and water, so I can give you so that you can reach the nearest town to save your life. But it's not free." Wow. So he says, okay, I'm going to die anyway, so please let me know the price. I'll pay. And the rescuing people, I say the person who is almost dying is Tom, and the person who approached it with extra gas and water is Bob. The Tom asks Bob, "So what should I pay?" And Bob says, "Oh, I think you live in Seoul, and do you have an apartment?" Yes, I have an apartment. "So you give me the apartment, you sign a contract saying that because Bob is giving me, I'm Tom, and Bob is giving me this water and gas, without which I'm gonna die certainly. So I'll give him my apartment in Seoul, which is like $1 billion or something, $1 million, $1 million or billion Korean won for this water and gas, because if I die, nothing left." So formally, they sign a contract. And then Bob gave Tom the water and gas. So later, several months later, Bob visits Tom and says, "Okay, give me your apartment, because that's mine. You signed the contract voluntarily." Yeah, Tom is not a 5-year-old boy. He knows what's going on, and he really voluntarily signed it. But the law says, we cannot enforce that. I mean, the Bob is exploiting the situation, a desperate situation of Tom, and the price was too much. If you ask me as an economist, I don't know. I mean, what if Bob, because of that, Bob does not give Tom the water and gas and Tom dies? That would be more tragic. Okay? The law says Tom should pay Bob to a certain degree, especially when Bob is not just another person exploiting the desert for hobby, but if Bob is kind of semi-professional in rescuing the people who might die in the, you can guess that in the big desert, there might be several people dying every year because they run out of water and gas. And which means there must be some people who carries extra water and gas in their car so that they help whenever those dying people are found. And the government says, we want to encourage that kind of behavior, helping others. And how? The monetary incentive. So if Tom pays Bob considerable amount, maybe not an apartment, but 1,000 times higher than the normal water price and gasoline price, that can be justified because in the future, Bob says, oh, I can make money by carrying extra water and gas, even though it's a huge burden for me, so that I can make a fortune whenever I found someone who got lost in the desert. And that would save a life in the future. So the government want to encourage somebody like Bob to carry extra water and gasoline to help others. So Tom should pay Bob a considerable money, even though it's not an apartment. Okay, so if you charge a more than usual price for a desperate person, that doesn't mean that the government would not force it, but maybe an apartment would be too much. The thing is, okay, go to the next one. It's the real case, Post versus Jones. And probably that's the name of captain or name of the owner of ship, because a lot of ships are involved. You know, whale oil was very expensive. So it was like 200 years ago, 1800 something. Whale oil ship is sinking in the middle of the ocean. Okay, and people say, help, help, help. And luckily, there were 3 ships around that ship, and they came to rescue. But it's so funny or so sad. The 3 ships came there, did not rescue them immediately, and they say, oh, before we rescue them, we want to do the auction, because the whale oil ship is sinking with a full of oil, expensive whale oil. So, I mean, it's sinking, so you should sell the whale oil first. So the 3 ships says, you should sell your whale oil to us at a very cheap price. As a result, the whale oil was sold at a very, very cheap price. And after signing the contract, the people in a sinking boat was rescued. You know, like, people are amazing. I mean, you see someone is dying, and before rescuing that people, you say like, you sell your whale oil at a cheap price, otherwise I'm not going to rescue, kind of thing. This really happened. Of course, this is the sinking ship is a desperate situation in necessity, and then like these 3 ships who came to rescue exploited that in a bad way. Okay, but this again, economically, I'm not really I cannot really say anything, because, you know, after all, do you want to sell your whale oil at a cheap price and being rescued, or you refuse and die? I don't know. So you signed it voluntarily, even though you are in a desperate situation. I mean, you know, everybody can say, "Oh, I was desperate." You know, like I got a job in America. So I'm sorry, I have to leave next week. So I have to sell my apartment this week. So I was in a desperate situation. So I sold my apartment in Korea at a 30% cheaper, only 70% of what usual price, because I have to sell it in 1 week. Can we say that's desperate? Like, because you are moving to America, all of a sudden you have to sell it in a week? So this desperate situation, the definition has so many meanings, and honestly, I do not know. But anyway, my guess is probably if this thing goes on, the whale ship or the person strayed in a desert would say that, why the government do something for us? So I lost my apartment for a gallon of water. Why? Because the government do not set anything in the desert area. I mean, like, whenever, if it's a normal country, whenever I call, the ambulances and rescue people should come and government doesn't have it. And people probably start complaining. Like the whale ship said, oh, my boat is sinking and I call 911 and nobody comes. And what is the government doing? I'm taxpayer and things like that. So my guess is, it's my pure guess, is that the government cannot cover everything. So they say the civilians should help the desperate other civilians, but do not charge a ridiculous price. Not because of the economic reason, but because that would look government look bad, something like that. Anyway, that's what I think. But anyway, necessity is not, from economics, not as clear as incompetence and duress in the previous situation, but necessity can be used as a reason not to enforce the contract. Impossibility, coronavirus, what else? The death. You ask death, war, fire, by lightning, and things like that. For example, you ask a painter to draw your portrait, okay, your face, next month. Okay, then this month, at the end of this month, the painter died. You sue the painter's wife and say that your husband promised to do the paint for me, the portrait of my face, but he died, so you should pay me. Nice guy. What a nice guy I am. But anyway, because the painter who died voluntarily signed a contract that within a month, I'm going to draw a portrait for you, and he broke it, I mean, you can ask the compensation for that. What about war? I want to deliver something to Japan by ship. So I ask Mr. Kim, who has a ship, oh, please deliver this my thing, 2 containers of stuff to Tokyo next year. But then the war broke out. And the Korean government says we need a ship to carry things for the military. So Mr. Kim's ship should be used. So Mr. Kim should give the government the ship. So the government would use that. As a result, Mr. Kim cannot deliver my product to Japan. I lost huge money because of that. I sue. But in government. So, or something like constructor Mr. Lee promised to me to build a house with a very, very huge basement, like a 3-story basement. I really like basement or something. So I pay him huge money, but then when he began to digging, he found out the land I own has a very solid rock beneath it. So just breaking this rock and make a basement would cost a fortune. So he said, I cannot do it. And I said, you voluntarily make a promise to build a basement for me, and it didn't say anything that when there is a rock, you are not going to do it and things like that. So it is more like the reliance case. Okay, like the who delivered the telegram, who is responsible for the not delivered telegram case. I mean, the lowest cost bearer. In that case, if you remember, the post office and the CEO had much lower cost for deliver the message definitely to the sole office than the post office. So this is more like that. I mean, who can handle the death of painter easier? Who can handle the war situation easier? Who can handle the rock situation easier? So it is not really the original contract is not enforced, but original contract plus reliance. Like the original contract with, there was a gap. There was a gap in the contract. What if the painter was dead? What if there was a war and the ship was taken by the government? What if there was a huge and hard rock underneath the land and it doesn't make any sense to make a basement in there? Okay, so this is not totally new. This is something like there was a gap in the contract, and the government, the judge should consider how to fill the gap with the default rules. Okay, so I think that is another reason, but not new reason to not enforcing the original contract if the lowest cost bearer is not the painter, not the ship owner, or not the construction company. The real examples. I don't want to give you more assignment because I heard the news that the students are suffering from assignment. But so I'm going to do it with you. There is a question 9.28, question 9.29 in the book. And if you want to have a look, you would have a fun. Question 9.28 is about Taylor versus Caldwell case in 1863. One of them, I guess Taylor is the actor and Caldwell is a theater owner, and Caldwell promised Taylor, I don't know if it's the other way, the theater owner promised the actor, okay, for the next 4 months, I'm going to pay you to act in my theater. But then after the first month, the theater got fired and everything is burned. So still 3 months left, and the theater owner says, I'm sorry, my theater is burned. We cannot have the audience, and we cannot do anymore. So even though I promise you 4 months, I cannot pay you the rest 3 months left. And Taylor sued because you promised 4 months, you pay me 4 months. Something like that. This is a case I think would be impossibility. Next question. Westinghouse is an electricity company in America, and they promised the local nuclear plant that I'm going to provide you the uranium